Hello, today we are having a look at the Fenix A320 in Microsoft Flight Simulator. I'd just like to reiterate, it's pronounced Phoenix. That's the way the people that work for Fenix pronounce it. It's not Fenix, it's Phoenix. Okay, so this is the study level A320 that was released last night for Microsoft Flight Simulator. We are going to get it ready for flight from cold and dark, following an entirely functional set of procedures. So this is not going to follow all of the checks and balances that a real pilot would go through. This is purely the mechanical steps required for you to go through to get the plane from its default cold and dark state ready to taxi and take off. Okay, so if we go and jump inside the aeroplane, the first thing we need to check on our physical controls is that all the switches and things are behaving as you would imagine, and the throttle is configured, and we'll get to that, how you can configure that in a moment. And just make sure things like the parking brake are in the right place and the undercarriage lever is in the right place before we do anything with the aircraft. Okay, so I've got mine ready. First things, I'm going to refer to keyboard combinations around the place. You may want to navigate around the airplane using the right mouse button to drag around as well, but I'm going to use the key combinations because it's easy for me to refer to, and it also correlates with a written set of instructions that I have made available and I will link to in the notes to this video. Okay, so if we press Control and 3, we go straight to the tablet at the side of the cockpit. So the tablet has lots of applications in it. It's very useful. All you have to do is hold the left mouse button down on the fingerprint icon and it lets you into the app. So you can see there's a Fenix app, a departure performance app, an arrival performance app, Navigraph, pilot brief app and settings. So we're going to go straight for the Fenix app, or Phoenix, sorry. I'm saying it myself wrong now, aren't I? So we go into the Fenix app and you can see it's asking for sim brief. You don't need to fill that in. So don't worry if you don't have a sim brief, but it is free to get a sim brief or a Navigraph account. You can get a free Navigraph account which will give you access to the sim brief portion, and that allows you to directly import flight plans from sim brief, which will configure the aeroplane for you. But we're not going to do that. We're going to step through it bit by bit today. So we want to go into panel states. So this is where you can control how the aircraft appears when you first load it in the simulator. Now you can see I have made cold and dark my default state, but I could say I want it in the ready state, for example, and you get, when you choose a state, you get the option to just activate it there and then, or set it as the default, and then it will ask it, do you want to activate it right now as well? Okay, so I've chosen cold and dark and it is my default. Okay, so that was it as far as I wanted to get into in here, so we'll finish with the tablet for the moment. We're going to press Control 5, which will take us over to the overhead panel in the cockpit. So the first thing we do in an Airbus is go to the electric and we turn on the batteries. So we flick both battery switches, they take a moment to switch on, and there we go. At the APU section, oh, it's worth pointing out actually at this point, if we wanted to use it, we could turn on the external power. So it is available. So you can see here, it's saying available. We can switch that on. Okay. So at the APU section is the next thing to deal with. So this is starting the auxiliary power unit, which we will transfer over to in a moment. But also it provides the compressed air to start the engines towards the end of the procedure. So we'll turn the APU on, and we'll press the start button for it. Also, because we are powering the aircraft up, we can go and turn on the emergency exit lights to armed. So you can see exit lights here, and the emergency arming is here. That's the external lights, sorry. The emergency exit lights down here, so we've switched that to armed and turn no smoking to auto. So next we go up overhead. So if I press Control 5 again to recenter this panel, at the top left you will see the GNADIRS. So this is the Inertial Navigation system. We need to turn all of these knobs to nav. And we need to turn, yeah, so the faults will disappear slowly. We need to then turn the status to STS, or the data, sorry, to STS, and SIST to and you will get a number appearing, and this is how many minutes until the system will be aligned. So we're not going to worry about that for the moment, because we've got plenty of other things to do while we're waiting for the inertial navigation system to align. So if we go back down into the cockpit, we're going to press Control and 1 to go to the MCDU. So this is the flight management computer. In Boeing terms, it's called the MCDU, or the MCDU in an Airbus. So we're going to go to the MC. If you're lost in this, if you've been looking around in it, I'm just going to point out before we go anywhere in here, we talked about wanting to calibrate controls. You can do it through the MCDU. So if you go into config, you've got controls config, and then you can calibrate. Notice there's an arrow at the top corner. This is very much a convention of the MCDU in the Airbus aircraft, or the MCDU. You can go left and right to go through pages, so you can see it's using a custom throttle profile that I've already configured. If I select calibrate, it will ask me to move my throttle to various positions, because if you've ever seen an Airbus before, the throttle has a number of what they call detents, or predetermined positions along its throw that mean things to the flight management computer. So if we just press Control 1 again to center up. So I'm not going to calibrate it now because I've already done it, but it's self-explanatory. And the same thing exists if we use the sideways key to calibrate the rudder, the flaps, so the flap lever, and if I keep going, oh no, that's it. So yeah, it's flaps, side stick and rudder, and the thrust levers. So calibration is in the MCDU. So if you get lost in these menus, just press the MCDU menu button to take you right to the top of the menu tree again. Okay, so to program a flight, we're going to go into the FMGC button, and that brings up a status page of the where you can see there the active nav database. So it's the dates of your AirAC data basically. So once you've done that, we go to init, which will program our flight. So the first thing we need to do is say where we are going from and to. So we're going to go from Stansted, we're on the ground at, which is EGSS. So that's the ICAO code for Stansted. And the bottom key is the same as in the Boeings and lots of other aircraft. It's called the scratch pad, and that's where you can key things into. So EGSS, but then we need the destination as well. So / we're going to fly to Edinburgh, or pretend we are. So EGSS to EGPH, and we click on the soft key next to the field that needs to be filled, and it's done it. We can make up a flight number if we want, so ABC123. We can put a cost index in. Cost index is a formula, if you're not aware, that determines how aggressively the aircraft can accelerate and climb. And we can put in our cruise flight level. So this flight level is thousands of feet divided by 100 basically. So for 36,000 feet you would put 360, which we will do, just to show you that that works. You could type 36,000, it would understand it. Okay, so then we can clear out any messages that appear. Aircraft position invalid, we won't worry about that at the moment. Primary lost, it's basically complaining because the inertial navigation system isn't configured yet. So we can align on reference, which is fine, confirm align, and the numbers will change slightly. Okay, so once we've done the initialization pages, we actually go into the flight plan page to program our flight. So if we click on flight plan, you can see at the moment all it has is the departure and the destination airfields and a big discontinuity in between. So it doesn't know how we are leaving Stansted or how we are arriving at Edinburgh. So you'll start to see as we go through these various things, there's a lot of programming required in the Airbus, but that then means that flying the aircraft becomes very straightforward because the airplane knows everything it needs to know about flying the route. Okay, so to set up our departure from Stansted, we just click on it on the flight plan page, and it comes up with this page asking us for the departure. So we click on departure, and we can then choose the runway we're taking off from. So we would have consulted either our flight plan or the wind to go and choose that. So runway 22 we're going to say for the moment, and then it's asking for the standard instrument departure route. So we'll say the BKY5R departure route out of Stansted, and then we can do an insert into the flight plan. Okay, so now it's programmed the various waypoints for that departure into the legs of the route, and you can scroll through them by using the arrows. Think of the arrows as pushing the display in the direction of the arrow. Yeah, so if I push up, you can see I'm pushing up through the flight plan, and you can see there's the discontinuity in the middle, and that's Edinburgh where we're going to, and there's the end of the flight plan. So that we can then select Edinburgh to choose how we are going to arrive there. So it now says arrival, so we say arrive. We're going to come in runway 06, and again it's listing the standard approach routes now because it knows this is the arrival to Edinburgh, and we'll choose the AGP E1E approach route, which is done, and then we can say insert. So we now have a complete plan. We could put extra waypoints in the middle where this discontinuity is. We're not going to today. We're just going to hit the clear button and then select the discontinuity, and it will delete it out of the plan. And again, you insert the change, and that's done. Okay, next thing to do is go through the performance data, and this is where the Airbus is a bit more involved than the Boeing. So performance data, it wants some V speeds, and it also wants some other data over here, so flaps for example, and a flex to temp number. So we have a calculator in the tablet to help us figure this stuff out. So if we press Control and 3, that takes us to the tablet. We click on the home button again over on the left of the tablet, and we go to the departure, so to begin with we look in the Fenix page or the departure page. So let's go back and have a look at the MCDU. The first thing it wants to know about is these V speeds. Yeah, I'm just going to check the initialization page again. Did we go? We didn't put everything in. If we go, yeah, on the next page of initialization, sorry, we need to put in the 0 fuel weight and the center of gravity and the block fuel. Yeah, so if we go back to the tablet with Control 3 and we go into the Fenix page, we can then go into mass and balance, and we get our numbers for the 0 fuel weight. So I'm going to use a pen and paper to write these things down. So ZFW is 44.0. So we're doing it in thousands, remember, thousands of kilograms. And the 0 fuel weight center of gravity, shown here as Mach ZFW, is 27.7, so 27.7. The gross weight is 47.0, and the gross center of gravity is 26.9. Okay. Notice also in this tablet, in the Fenix app, you also get the ground services. So this is where you can disconnect the ground power unit and the chocks, things like that. Okay. So notice this is also where you can set the fuel. So in the tanks at the moment we have 2,900 kilograms of fuel. So I'm going to put 2.9 of fuel. So then we go back to the MCDU. 0 fuel weight was 44. But we also need the center of gravity, so it's 44 slash, and it was 27.7. So a piece of paper is actually really useful for this. So there we go. Block fuel. How much fuel have we got in the aircraft? We had 2.9 thousand kilograms of fuel. Okay, so that's worked out our takeoff weight now. So now we can get back to the things I was talking about earlier. We can go back to the performance page now, and we can put in those V speeds. So now the aircraft knows how much it weighs and what runway it's on. We can go back to the tablet. This is a bit of a run back and forth to do this, and we can look in the departure performance calculator. Okay, so we are at Stansted. We are going to be taking off though on runway 22. It's a dry day, it's not raining outside. Aircraft configuration. We need to fill in the boxes that are empty. If we try to calculate, it will light up the fields that we haven't filled in. So takeoff weight. So our gross weight was 47. Okay. And our centre of gravity at takeoff was 26.9. Okay, done that. And now we can calculate. Oh no, it's saying we've still got some... Oh, I need to put in 47.0. 0.0. It didn't understand it as a number, basically. And then we can calculate. Oh, sorry, weather conditions. This is the first time I've done a full workthrough of this, by the way. So we can sync this with the live weather. So that's a bit of a shortcut there. So it's given us our QNH of 1017, which I will fill in case we need to fill it in anywhere else. And we can then calculate finally, and there it goes. And it will calculate our v-speeds, which I'm going to write down, which are 117, 118, and 121. And we also are going to take notice of flaps, which is 1/up 0.4, and our flex temp, which is 68. Okay, so then we can go back down to the MCDU and we can program those in. So 117. It's worth pointing out, if you use SimBrief, a lot of this is done for you. But I'm just showing you the functional stuff you need to do to program the plane. And V2 is 121. So these are the numbers, I'm just reading them back off. That wasn't filled in on the calculator, so we're not doing it here. Flaps was 1. So that basically means set the flaps to setting 1 for takeoff. And then up 0.4. So this is basically going to automatically trim the aircraft. And the flex temperature is 68. That's basically the temperature outside. The reason for using flex temperature is you can derate the engines by setting a temperature that isn't the actual temperature outside. So we go to next phase and next phase, and this is pretty much, you can leave all this as it is usually. We're not going to get into too much about that. So remember we said set temperature at 60. This is for the approach though. So this is yeah, I'm not going to bother putting any of this in. You would fill this in en route when you find the information out, so you could come back into performance and fill in the approach information. But you don't have to. Yeah, it's not mandatory. It's just that it's going to help the aircraft to behave more accurately. Okay, so we have essentially programmed the initialization data, we've programmed the flight plan, and we've programmed the performance data. And we've used a tablet to help us calculate those things. Obviously, when we're getting near or when we're en route, we could go back to the arrival calculator to figure out the numbers to put in the performance for the arrival. Yeah. So we've got, yeah, for the approach, sorry. Yeah, so you're going to obviously put the atmospheric pressure in of the destination so the aircraft knows how to configure itself for landing. Okay, what do we do next? Let's go, and we would configure our altimeter at this point. So we can obviously change this as per usual. We can change the format of the numbers, or the scale between hectopascals and inches. What's next? Configure as required for managed or selected mode. So we're going to press Control 7, which will give us the master control panel. Actually, I'm going to do this from one side because it's easier to see. So if you click on the top half of any of these knobs on the master control panel, so this is the speed for the auto throttle, this is the heading, this is the altitude, and this is the vertical speed. If you click the top half of these, I'll just roll this round. So say we're going to climb to 5,000 feet for our initial climb out. If you click the top half, it will go to managed mode. If you click the bottom half, it will go to selected mode. So that's the difference between pushing the knobs and pulling them. Yeah? So if we push the speed knob, the plane's going to do what it thinks, according to the flight plan. If we pull... Sorry, if I can get it to do this. There we go. If we pull the knob, that's the same as pulling it towards us. So if you think about it, pushing it is pushing it towards the aeroplane and saying to the plane, you do what you think's best. If you pull it, you're pulling it towards you. So you're saying, I know what's best. Do what I tell you. Yeah, so you might say 220 knots for the climb out. Yeah, but we're going to say managed mode. Managed heading. The altitude is fine. We'll wait until we're taxiing out to be able to switch that on. I'm a bit interested as to why that won't go to managed mode now, actually. That's an interesting one. Anyway, we're not going to worry too much about that now. So, back on the overhead panel. By now, while we were busy talking, you can see the APU has spun up and it's available. So the auxiliary power unit is now running. It's a small jet engine in the back of the plane. So if we go out there and have a look at it, you can see the heat pouring out of the back of the plane. So we can actually turn the external power to off. Okay, so then we could go back to Control 3 for the tablet. We could go to the home page. We could go to the Fenix app. We can go to ground services, and we can tell the GPU to go away. Okay, we could also get rid of the chocks at this point, as long as you have to remember we've set the parking brake. Okay, so then Control 1 would take us back down to the MCDU. So what are we doing next? Oh no, we're going overhead to look at the strobes and the lights and everything else. Okay, so we're going to turn the strobes on. Again, I'm not following procedure here. We're just going to go turn the lights on. So nav and logo, and we don't need to worry about the landing lights. We can put the taxi lights on, but maybe not just yet. Okay, so at this point you would arrange your pushback. We can also go and turn on things like the fuel pumps. Let me just check I'm not doing this out of order at all. Have I missed something along the way? I don't think I have. Okay, so we can go and turn the fuel pumps on. So we're getting ready to start the aeroplane. APU bleed goes to on. So as soon as you've got the APU running and you've got the APU on, you're providing the compressed air to spin the engines up. Yeah, so you could do this during a pushback if you were doing it. So to spin the engines up now, we can either do this by pressing a key combination to show us the center console, which is Control 6, or I find it actually easier to press F and use the pilot's view of this. So to start the engines, you turn the ignition knob to start, and then you press the starter switch for the engine. So you go with the right engine first, engine number 2, and you can see as soon as we've done that, the N2 number is climbing for engine number 2. Okay, so you'll see as it climbs, suddenly the exhaust gas temperature will rise and the N1 number. So N2 is the gas turbine and N1 is the turbofan. So you wait for that to come up to speed. This highlight on N2 will extinguish when the engine is ready. So we just wait for that. At this point you might also want to go and turn on the seatbelt signs. You would normally have done the seatbelts before pushback, obviously, but we're starting from a parking bay here. So, okay, so it's extinguished. We can actually go and start engine number 1 now. So we leave it on IGN start on the ignition. We flick number 1, and you'll see engine number 1 is coming up. The reason with a lot of these big aircraft to start engine number 2 first is it tends to be engine number 2 that pressurizes the hydraulics for the brakes. I think typically, as long as engine number 2 is started first thing on a morning when the aircraft is being, got out of the hangar, then that's good enough. Then throughout the rest of the day, if it hasn't been sat for hours and hours, all of the hydraulic pressures will remain pressurized, or the cylinders will remain pressurized. Okay, so both engines have now started and they've stabilized out. So now we can go and turn the ignition back to norm. So we're essentially now at the point where we are ready to taxi. So we've removed the chocks, we've removed the GPU already, the ground power unit. So we make sure the flaps are in takeoff position, which for us was setting number 1. If you remember, we programmed that into the performance pages of the MCDU. We turn the nose light to taxi, ready to taxi. So up here, nose light goes to taxi. We come off the parking brake and we can start rolling. I'm just easing the throttle forward and steering away from the buildings. There is a lag on the throttles. I think I need to calibrate my rudder. Again, this is the first time I've moved with the aircraft, to be honest, since installing it. All I've done is configured the controller and then sorted out the startup sequence, so you get to see it same time as me. This is my first experience. I wonder if this will select the altitude yet. No, it won't. Okay, so we are going to go. We're not going to play games with going fully automatic. We're just going to accelerate down the runway and see how the plane comes off into the air, and we'll end the video there. We're obviously not going to fly the whole route today. This was just about getting the aircraft started and getting through the MCDU. So yeah, as I said earlier, the Airbus is all about preparation. You can't really just jump in it and fly it and expect to do well. Okay, so let's get going. So gently move the throttles forwards. It is like a rocket ship when you let it go. So okay, so managed mode has appeared. Auto throttle is switched on automatically. We didn't get a rotate announcement, which is interesting. Gear up. Throttles to climb to tent and autopilot on, and the plane takes over. And that's pretty much our job done. So there's a few discrepancies there for me to do some research on, but for a first look at configuring the Airbus for flight and getting it in the air, that wasn't so bad. So the plane is automatically managing its speed and its climb rate. You can see TCAS is still, we haven't switched TCAS on. That's one of our last things to do, is go and switch on TCAS. So we go to TARA now. We didn't put the seat belts. Oh, we did put the seat belts on. Yeah, so it's just telling us. APU bleed is still on. We could go and switch all the APU off now. We could have done that before takeoff, because obviously once you've got the engines running, they are providing power. So the aeroplane now is following the standard instrument departure completely automatically. So altitudes, speeds, the whole bit. It's flying itself. There we go, ladies and gentlemen, the Fenix Airbus in-flight simulator. It's pretty good, isn't it? And if you go and watch any of the videos by the professional pilots that operate this aircraft week in, week out, they're saying that this behaves absolutely on the money. And all of the instrumentation you see around the cockpit is accurate. Okay, so there you go, the Fenix Airbus in Microsoft Flight Simulator. hopefully you enjoyed that, and I'll see you again soon. Oh, this is interesting. Look, the reason we didn't get the call outs is I didn't move the markers, I think. Okay, but again, more things to think about for the future, more things to learn, and that's going to be the journey. And it's going to be really good fun to learn a new plane and to learn a study level plane. So there we go. Okay, co-pilot seems to be strangely absent. I wonder, can we just have a wander down through the plane? Do we have to undo the door? Oh my word. Oh my word. I've been on A320s so often with work. It's quite interesting to see. And they've modelled the sound. That's stunning. Oh, the graphics card is busy. It's putting cloud through the plane, maybe, I'm not sure. But again, this is version 1.0 of the plane. It only came out yesterday. I imagine there's going to be all sorts of bits and pieces they're noticing that aren't quite right. Should we go and see if we can see out the window? That's mad, isn't it? It's about where I usually sit, I think. Maybe you sit a few seats back normally so I can see the wing. But yeah, it's absolutely modelled wonderfully. Obviously they don't usually leave the cockpit door open, so we can press F obviously to jump straight back into the cockpit. But there you go, the Fenix Airbus A320 in Microsoft Flight Simulator. Oh, we didn't uncage the standby attitude indicator. That's something else to put on my checklist, which obviously is now not going to stabilise because I didn't do it on the ground. Okay, so if you want a very good Airbus that's study level and that's been tested to death by professional developers, this is the one to get. It does have a bit of a hit on frame rate, but obviously that's because it's simulating a lot and doing it all properly. Oh, this is interesting. I wonder if they've done it. Yes, they have. They've even modelled the binnacle compass to come down out of the roof, which it should. That's fantastic. Brilliant. That's really amused me. I didn't think that anyone was ever going to bother modelling that. So the hatches and stuff open. Oh my word, they do. And I think the clipboard where the laptop would be does work, yes. So I don't know if this is going to appear in a later update, but obviously you can put a laptop on here to do your flight planning stuff, or just your operational flight plan even, which would be quite cool. I've not tried the printer yet. I've not looked at the ATSU menu. So if we go to MCDU, can we go to ATSU and do that? AOC, weather request for EGPH, for example. We want a meta information, please. Yes, send. Let's go back. Received messages, weather data. Can't print it by the look of it, which is a shame. I did wonder if the printer works. But you can receive the weather while you're in flight, which is really useful as well. And it's worth pointing out that the MCDUs are independent, so you can do different things on each one. Also, the tablets in the cockpit are completely independent, so you can use them to jump from side to side. Obviously the ECAM screen all works properly, so you can see the bleed information, the pressurization, the electricity information, the hydraulics, the fuel, the APU. It's fantastic, isn't it? The doors, the wheels, the flight controls, and it all works as per the real plane. This is study level to the extreme. And we're in the cloud at the moment, so there's not much to see. Anyway, I'm going to leave it there. This has been my first startup of the A320, which you shared with me. You saw a few minor mistakes along the way. There's obviously a lot more to learn. Isn't it fantastic? I'll see you again soon.